Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started. Welcome to tonight's forum, Drug Allergies and Primary Immunodeficiency. I'm Kathy Antela, Vice President of Education at IDF, and so glad to see each and every one of you here tonight. This forum is being recorded. Tomorrow you will receive an email from IDF. It will include a link to a short survey, which we hope you will complete in order to help us know what topics you would like to hear about next time and what you thought about tonight's forum. As always, a disclaimer, please remember that the information presented during this event is not medical advice, nor is it intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health provider with questions concerning a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it based on the information presented during this event. IDF has been here for over 40 years for individuals in the PI community. Our mission is improving the diagnosis, treatment, and quality of life of people affected by primary immunodeficiency through fostering a community empowered by advocacy, education, and research. We totally value our role as a patient advocacy organization. Whether you are a healthcare provider, an individual with PI, or a family member, Ask IDF is here for you. You can send your questions about health insurance or basic general questions about PI, or looking for information to share with your child's school or employment issues. Contact Ask IDF. It's right on our homepage, and we will be thrilled to have one of our staff members follow up with you via phone or email based on what you prefer in order to answer your question. Are you looking for support? There are two options. One option is a Get Connected group. These are virtual groups of small groups led by our wonderful IDF Get Connected leaders who are volunteers. They happen throughout the nation, throughout the year, virtually, and they are all listed on IDF's calendar of events. If you haven't joined us in a small group setting where you can get support and share support and just meet others, this is your chance. Sign up now. And if you are thinking, you know, small group's not for me, I'd prefer one-to-one, you can get that support too. Just send a request to Ask IDF and say, I would like one-to-one peer support, and you will be networked with one of our wonderful peer support volunteers. As always, thank you. Thank you to our sponsors who support programs such as this at the Immunodeficiency Foundation and support programs throughout the community. So thank you to this year's sponsors, CSL Behring, Grifols, Takeda, Horizon, Accredo, Octapharma, ADMA Biologics, AstraZeneca, Farming Healthcare, X4 Pharmaceuticals, Kedrion Biopharma, Enzavant, and Chiesi Global Rare Diseases. We are looking forward to hearing from some of our sponsors tonight as they share information directly with us and via some videos about the important role they play in the PI community. And at this time, I am going to invite a couple of our representatives from CSL Behring to share some words with us.
So good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of CSL Behring, I would like to thank the IDF for the opportunity for Agnes and myself to present in today's IDF Educational Forum. I am the Associate Director in the Gene Therapy Flow Cytometry Group here at CSL Behring Pasadena. and my colleague Agnes Lukashevich, I hope I did not murder her last name, she's very patient with us, is Senior Manager in the Gene Therapy Research and Clinical Bioanalytics Group. So today we have about 3 slides, and I would like to talk a little bit about the advances that CSL Behring is making in the field of gene therapy and its potential applications in the treatment of primary immunodeficiencies. Could we go to the next slide, please? So CSL Behring, as you may or may not know, is a global biotechnology leader that develops and manufactures treatments for people living with several rare diseases. And as you can see in the map on the left, this shows you CSL's worldwide presence and the sites where innovation is driven. One of the focus areas for CSL in our commitment to our promise to patients is immunology and immune deficiencies and autoimmune diseases. And many innovative treatments are being actively researched to help patients with these disorders. Among these, today we will talk about gene therapy, which shows a great promise for primary immunodeficiencies. May I have the next slide, please? So in immunodeficiency treatment, long-term corrective action can often be achieved through bone marrow transplants. But unfortunately, not all patients are able to find a donor who is a matched bone marrow donor. And for those patients, gene therapy is a viable option. Gene therapy is a new and emerging technology that's particularly relevant to rare diseases because 80 to 85% of rare diseases are the result of a single gene disorder. And gene therapy aims to correct these disorders by introducing a corrective gene to replace the defective one. Gene therapy has the potential for long-lasting or even curative outcomes, and if it's successful, it can make a great difference to the quality of life of those who receive this therapy. In the schematic to the right, you can see the process of how gene therapy addresses the underlying issues within defective DNA, which is the genetic material inside our cells. Mobilized blood stem cells are collected from the patient's blood. These stem cells are then isolated in a sterile fashion in the laboratory. And a corrective gene is then introduced into them using a vector, which serves as a vehicle for introducing new and corrective genes into the patient cells. These cells are then tested for safety and potency and infused back into the patient. And the hope is that these stem cells with the newly introduced corrective gene will now allow the body to restore the normal function of the missing or the abnormal protein. May I have the next slide, please? As part of CSL's commitment to innovation and to meet the growing needs of patients in primary immunodeficiencies, in 2020, CSL entered into a collaboration with Seattle Children's Research Institute to develop stem cell therapies for primary immunodeficiency diseases such as Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome and X-linked gamma globulinemia, or XLA. While clinical trials themselves pose unique and complex challenges, gene therapies are inherently complex. But the potential of cell and gene therapies offers optimism for patients. More than a century ago, CSL made a promise to protect the health of those stricken with serious medical disorders. Today, gene therapy brings us one step closer to making formerly incurable conditions into manageable ones. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you to CSL Behring for their support and the wonderful work that you do for those of us in the PI community. And at this time, I would like to introduce tonight's presenter. We are honored to have Dr. Yesim Demirdag with us, and she is from University of California in Irvine, California, where she is the director of the Allergy and Immunology Fellowship Program, an associate professor of clinical medicine in the Division of Basic and Clinical Immunology in the Department of Medicine. And I would like you now to please join me in welcoming her as she presents drug allergies and primary immunodeficiency. I am going to stop share, and Dr. Demirdag, please share your slides.
All right. Thank you. Hi, everyone. First, it's a pleasure to be here. And I'd like to thank IDF for this wonderful opportunity to share with you some updates on drug allergies and how they may be relevant to primary immune deficiencies. So let me share my slides. Okay. Okay. I hope my slides are visible to everybody.
You're fine.
Great, thanks. So in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try to answer some common questions. And at the end, I will be happy to answer other questions you may have. So the questions include what is a true allergic reaction and what is not an allergic reaction? How common is drug allergy in general population and also in patients with primary immune deficiencies? Is there any risk factors and what are the risk factors? Can anybody get drug allergies? And how important it is to confirm or rule out drug allergies? And how do we do that? How do we diagnose drug allergy? And how do we manage drug allergy? If a patient is allergic to a drug and they really need that drug, there is no alternative, can we still give that drug to the patient? And I will go over these questions through some patient stories. And today I'm happy to share 2 stories with you. So the first patient is Mrs. Smith. She is a 65-year-old woman with common variable immune deficiency. And she has this penicillin allergy on her records for many years. And when asked, she said, when I was a baby, I had a rash when I was on penicillin. And my doctor told my parents that I should never get penicillin again, otherwise I may die. So she has been avoiding penicillin and cephalosporins, which are in the same class with penicillins for many years. And the second patient is Mr. Jones. He's a 65-year-old man with hypogammaglobulinemia. A few years ago, he had sinus infection, and he was prescribed amoxicillin. And he had tolerated this antibiotic before without any problem. However, this time, within a couple of hours after taking the first dose, he developed hives. Thankfully, he didn't have any other severe symptoms and he didn't have to go to the hospital. He took a few tablets of Benadryl and symptoms resolved. Then he called his doctor, who said, okay, stop amoxicillin and let me put it on your chart and never take amoxicillin again, and let me give you something else. So how do we approach these patients? And now one of the messages I wanted to give today is not all adverse drug reactions are drug allergies. And adverse drug reactions can be classified in different ways, but for the purpose of this talk, I classify them as allergic drug reactions and non-allergic drug reactions. And non-allergic drug reactions are actually much more common than allergic reactions. And these include predictable dose-dependent reactions, maybe due to known pharmacologic effect of the drugs, such as side effects. Some people develop nausea or diarrhea with antibiotics, but not always. Some people become sleepy with antihistamines or toxicity. So, for example, some medications we know, some antibiotics can be toxic to the kidneys or livers. And drug-drug interactions, when you take these drugs separately, nothing happens, but when you take them together, there may be some reactions to these drugs. Other non-allergic drug reactions can be unpredictable and dose independent. And these are rare. And the most well-known is pseudo-allergic reactions. And we know more about vancomycin infusion syndrome or vancomycin-induced flushing syndrome. This really mimics the allergic reaction. However, patients may tolerate it when the vancomycin is given slowly and maybe with the premedication with antihistamine. Another example may be radio contrast media allergy. And of course, you can develop allergic reactions to these medications, but most commonly those are pseudo-allergic reactions. And some patients may be intolerant to some drugs, and this is not an allergic reaction. And idiosyncrasy happens to genetically susceptible people when they take a specific drug. For example, when there is a deficiency in an enzyme called G6PD, and a patient takes a malaria drug or dapsone, they develop anemia from medications. Allergic drug reactions, on the other hand, are different, and they involve the immune system. They occur when a component, a part of our immune system, recognizes the drug or a part of the drug as an allergen and reacts to it. And depending on which immune system part is involved, they can be immediate drug reactions or delayed drug reactions. Immediate drug reactions, examples like developing hives or swelling with penicillin, and then delayed reactions can happen days or weeks after you start taking the medication. And then develop either a mild skin reaction or severe reactions such as Stevens-Johnson syndrome or DRESS syndrome or other conditions which may require hospitalization, ICU stay. So among drug reactions, allergic drug reactions, Ig-mediated or immediate type of reactions are much more common than delayed reactions. And as allergists, one of our jobs is to categorize the reaction that our patient had, and then we make a plan based on the category. So today, as I mentioned, non-allergic drug reactions are much more common, specifically predictable, and dose-dependent reactions are much more common than allergic reactions. And today I will just focus on Ig-mediated drug reactions. And very briefly, I want to just explain how it happens. So some patients, when they receive the drug, their immune system form IgE antibody against that drug. And that Ig antibody goes and sits on the cells that are called mast cells or basophils. So mast cells are also known as allergy cells. And next time when this drug is introduced again, weeks or months or years later, the drug goes and binds to the Ig receptors on the mast cells, which trigger mast cells to release some mediators like chemicals, and the most famous chemical is histamine. And the reactions are due to these mediators, and they include, the most common reactions include hives or urticaria or welts, swelling, which can happen on the lips, face, eyelids, or extremities, or even in the throat, causing throat tightness, breathing difficulty, or coughing and wheezing. So these are the most common IG-mediated drug reaction symptoms. These reactions occur within minutes to hours after taking the first dose of the drug. It doesn't happen. You start the medicine, you take today, and then tomorrow you take this, the next day's dose, and then you have a reaction. This is not IG-mediated. And then the most severe form is anaphylaxis. So that's where you have low blood pressure or more systems involved, more than one system involved. And in these reactions, fatality may be up to 10%. Okay, there are some drugs that more commonly cause IG-mediated reactions, and by far the most common drug that trigger IG-mediated reactions are antibiotics, and among them the most common is penicillin or beta-lactam antibiotics. Others include neuromuscular blocking agents, like these are the medications that are given during general anesthesia, chemotherapy medications, biologics, and NSAIDs, aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen. Okay, so what are the risk factors for drug allergies? Obviously, if somebody takes drug, there's a risk factor always. And anybody at any time can develop a drug allergy to any medication. We see drug allergies more often in adults than children. And recurrent drug exposure and route of exposure for some medications can be risk factors to develop drug allergies. Interestingly, genetic is not a risk factor for IG-mediated drug allergy. It can be a risk factor for delayed type of reaction, but not for IG-mediated reactions. And if you appreciate these two risk factors, recurrent drug exposure and route of exposure, if you think about it, primary immune deficiency patients have these two risk factors already. All right, so let's go back to our patients, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones. Now they are in the hospital with pneumonia, and because they have this penicillin allergy label on their records, their doctors say, okay, penicillin drug is the best drug to treat pneumonia. It's the preferred drug, but since you're allergic, we're going to give you an alternative drug that you are not allergic. Okay, so when we say alternative drug to a patient who is allergic to another drug, we assume or we want to believe that the alternative drug is safe and as good as the culprit drug. However, from recent studies, we know that that's not the case. For example, patients who have the penicillin allergy label on their chart or on their medical records have a lot of problems. They have bad complications with infections when they get the infections or when they are hospitalized. They have increased risk of delayed antibiotic treatment, increased risk of usage of alternative or broader spectrum antibiotics, which means these antibiotics kill other bacteria unnecessarily, causing other problems, suboptimal treatment of their infection. They stay in the hospital longer than other people who don't have penicillin allergy label on their charts. They may get recurrent infections with drug resistance microbes. And they get more adverse reactions with the stronger medications, also complications from them, such as C. diff. They can be readmitted more often than the other people who don't have penicillin allergy on their chart. In addition, a large recent study showed that patients who have pneumonia and then they have penicillin allergy on their charts, they have the worst outcome. Increased risk of ICU admission, increased risk of prolonged stay. And furthermore, if somebody has penicillin allergy on their chart and they need a surgery, there's an increased risk of developing drug resistance infections. So as you see, there are many, many reasons for us to do everything possible to prevent these unnecessary avoidance, unnecessary labeling of the penicillin in the chart. Okay, so let's talk about penicillin allergy because this is the mostly reported drug allergy in the US. About 10% of patients say that they're allergic to penicillin. However, when they are tested by an allergist and given the penicillin, only 1% is allergic to penicillin. The rest 9% tolerate the penicillin, so they don't have allergy. So why is that? Why is these 9 people out of 100 think that they are allergic to penicillin, but they are actually not? And they are unnecessarily avoiding the penicillin and putting themselves at risk for all the complications. Okay, there may be a few reasons. The first reason is the initial reaction was not an allergic reaction. It was one of the non-allergic reactions that we were talking about earlier. And the second possibility, again, this is something we have learned recently from many studies, is that we can lose our allergies over time. Our body changes, our immune system changes, and our allergies can change too. So studies show that after 10 years of avoidance, about 80% of patients who had allergic reaction to penicillin are able to tolerate penicillin. So this may be another possibility. And then some patients just avoid penicillin and they want the penicillin allergy on their records just based on the family history. And we know that family history is not a risk factor for Ig-mediated penicillin allergy. And they should not be avoiding. They have the same risk as other people who don't have penicillin allergy. And another possibility is that the initial symptom was not due to the drug, but maybe due to the illness that they were suffering from at that time when they took the drug. The most common example is a viral rash. So this happens to kids all the time. They get viral infections, and then some viruses can trigger a rash, what we call a morbilliform rash. And this is a very benign rash. And if the patient is already on antibiotic, we tend to blame the antibiotic, but not the virus. And we just put the allergy on the records just because of this rash. Or they may get headaches from sinus infection and they blame the drug and they put the drug on the chart. Or it may be fatigue from the viral infection. So there are many reasons for this discrepancy. Okay, so this is in general population. So what do we know about patients with primary immune deficiencies? So one would expect that primary immune deficiency patients have a higher prevalence of reported drug allergy because they are exposed to medications more often than other people who don't have primary immune deficiencies. And there are a few reports on that. And self-reported drug allergies were studied or investigated in several reports. And according to the USID-NET registry, about 41% of patients with autosomal dominant hyper Ig syndrome reported drug allergy. 35% of patients common variable immune deficiency said they are allergic to drugs. In patients with 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, 19% said they are allergic to drug, and in DOC8 deficiency, this was 9%. And these two conditions, these studies included majority of the patients were children, and we know that in general, we see drug allergies less often. So if you notice that this report of drug allergies 9 to 41% in people with primary immune deficiencies. And what about, are they really true drug allergies? So like in other people who don't have primary immune deficiency, only 1% was allergic to drug. 95% of people who said they're allergic to drug or penicillin were not allergic to penicillin. So we have some data on penicillin allergy in common variable immune deficiency. Before I go into detail, in our center at UCI, we follow about 500 patients with primary immune deficiencies. Majority of our patients are adults and majority have antibody deficiencies. And the reported penicillin allergy is 24%. And we don't know how many of them have true penicillin allergy. So we have a lot of work to clarify that. But there are two studies, they looked at that. And one study took 100 patients with CVID, and 33 of them, which is 33%, said they are allergic to penicillin. And when they investigated these patients further, some of them didn't have really drug allergy reactions. Some were already evaluated and cleared, but the penicillin allergy was still in the chart. And some of the patients were able to undergo skin testing and office challenge, and all tolerated without any immediate type of reaction. Only one developed at delayed nausea and vomiting. 33% patients said they are allergic, but none of them actually were allergic to penicillin. In another study, they looked at 160 patients with CVID. 34 said they are allergic to penicillin, 21%, still much higher than general population. But again, when they investigated the subgroup of patients, they did not have immediate reaction. So this tells us that the rest of these patients, majority of these patients, were unnecessarily avoiding penicillin, and they are putting themselves at higher risk of those complications I was telling you about: increased risk of delayed treatment, risk of getting treatment with stronger antibiotics, readmission, longer hospital stay, and etc. And also these studies tells us that true penicillin allergy may be extremely rare in CVID. And unfortunately, we don't have this kind of data on other primary immune deficiencies. Okay, so many of you have immunologists who are also board certified allergists, or they have close connection to the allergists. So they can help patients with primary immune deficiencies to clarify their allergies. If it is a true penicillin allergy and they have to avoid, or if it is not a penicillin allergy and they can take it. And in allergy clinic, we do this by first taking a good history. We ask a lot of questions about the initial reactions. When did you take it? How long ago? What happened? When did the reaction happen? After the first dose, after the next day? And did you have to go to the hospital? Did you have to be hospitalized? Did you stay in the ICU? All the detailed questions. And if you appreciate, most of us don't remember even like what show we watched last week. So many patients obviously cannot remember the details, which happened like a couple of years or many years ago. So this is totally understandable, but some of them remember when it happened, and then if they had to go to the hospital, emergency room, or ICU, and if the reaction was blistering or other severe reactions. So after we take this history, we make a decision on this is high risk, this is low risk, this is moderate risk, and we go to the next step. Sometimes by just listening to the patient, what happened, we can easily remove the penicillin allergy. And then sometimes in some patients, we do skin testing or drug challenge. So skin test is available for several types of drugs, but the best one is to penicillin. It is a really good test. If it is positive, we know that it's very likely the patient is going to react. And it is negative, we know that patient is not going to react. And this is an example of penicillin testing. And here, this is a negative control, and then these are the penicillins, and we compare the reaction to the negative control. So this patient had a negative test and tolerated amoxicillin afterward. And skin testing is very simple. We do it in allergy clinic all the time. and it takes about 45 minutes. And at the end of the 45 minutes, we can tell you, okay, this is positive, maybe we should keep it in your records and you avoid it, or this is negative. Okay, let's just give you amoxicillin in the office. That's called drug challenge, and then see what happens. So drug challenge, we do it for penicillin and for many other drugs. And this is considered the gold standard to diagnose or rule out drug allergies. And a drug challenge can be a one step. We just give the full dose and monitor, or two steps. We give a part of the dose, full dose, and monitor for half an hour, 1 hour. And then if nothing happens, we give the full dose. If something happens, if we give the drug and then patient reacted, we treat it. Allergy offices where we do the challenges are fully prepared to treat an allergic reaction. And then we say, okay, you are allergic and you need to avoid. If it is negative, if the patient tolerated the drug, we can comfortably remove the penicillin allergy from patient's allergy list, or whichever drug we are doing from the patient's allergy list. And we give the patient a letter saying that you tolerated amoxicillin today, and you can have the penicillin allergy removed from other medical records. You can take it to the pharmacy or other doctors, so they can also remove the penicillin from your records. If it is, however, positive, we keep the penicillin allergy or drug allergy on the records, and we say you will avoid it. However, if there's no alternative, there's no good alternative, and the patient has to take this medication, we perform a procedure called drug rapid desensitization, where we dilute the medication like 1 to 100 and infuse it slowly and increase the rate and concentration as the patient tolerates. And this gives the patient a temporary desensitization. And it's good until the treatment is completed, 1 week, 10 days, whichever. However, next time patient needs this medication, they need a repeat desensitization. Or if several doses are skipped, they may need a repeat desensitization. So this is not a permanent solution. Okay, so let's go back to our cases. So Mrs. Smith, we thought that it was a low risk, and we did, while she was still in the hospital, we did a one-step challenge with full dose of penicillin drug, which she tolerated. And she was quickly discharged and completed the treatment at home. And she has good and then penicillin allergy, as well as cephalosporin was removed from her chart. So she will be able to take these medications in the future. And for Mr. Jones, since the reaction happened relatively recently, and it's included immediate type of reaction, we thought that it was a moderate risk. According to the recent studies, now we know that there is only minimal cross-reactivity between penicillins and cephalosporins, and patients who had allergic reaction to penicillins and the reaction was mild or moderate, they may be able to safely take cephalosporins, certain classes of cephalosporins, without any problem. And then cephalosporin is another good option targeted for pneumonia. So he received cephalosporin, and then he was discharged from the hospital quickly. And then we brought him back to the clinic, and we did a penicillin skin testing, which was negative. And we gave the amoxicillin in the office, and he tolerated that well. So we removed the penicillin allergy from his health records as well. Okay, so today in my talk, I try to explain the recent updates. And one of the messages I wanted to give was, I hope I was able to do that, not all drug reactions are allergic reactions. And anybody can enter drug allergy on the chart, but it takes an allergist or a dedicated physician who works hard to remove that allergy from the medical records. And we now know that penicillin allergy is by far the most reported drug in the US, about 10% of Americans. And most importantly, having penicillin allergy label on the medical records has negative consequences, as like I described before. But the good news is that 95% of these people who think that they're allergic to penicillin are actually not allergic to penicillin, and they have been avoiding penicillin unnecessarily. And when it comes to primary immune deficiencies, we don't have a lot of data on that. However, we now know that reported penicillin allergy is much more common in primary immune deficiencies, but probably the true penicillin allergy may be extremely rare, at least in common variable immune deficiency. And removing penicillin allergy label can be done by clinical history, and in some cases by drug testing and challenge, and your immunologist or allergist can easily help you with that. All right, this was the end of my talk, and thank you for your attention, and I can take any questions.
Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful information with us. As a parent of a child with a PI, yes, we've been down that road, and we're told for years that he was allergic to penicillin, and by golly, he's not. He's went through the testing and actually is taking it right now because he's got one of those viral infections that's going around. So thank you, Dr. Demirdag, for the wonderful information you have shared with us. We're going to start the Q&A in just a moment. And right now we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We have 4 short videos to share with you from Grifols, Takeda, Accredo, if I could speak, and ADMA Biologics. So we will do that right now, then we'll be right to the Q&A.
Hi, my name is Ruki Mensch, and I'm one of Grifols' immunoglobulin certified nurse educators. As part of Grifols, whose mission is to improve the health and well-being of people around the world, the nurses support the PI community through education of healthcare providers on all aspects of IG care. Our goal is to improve medical outcomes and quality of life. Grifols is dedicated to ensuring that people who need plasma products have access to them. They do this through plasma donation awareness, sustainable supply efforts, and education to increase the early identification and treatment of PIDD. For more information about Grifols, please visit us at grifols.com.
My name is Dana Fladhammer. At Takeda, I am the Director of IG Community Support. You might know the team I'm lucky enough to be a part of as the MyIG Source Patient Advocates. I know that throughout my journey as a mom of 4 children living with primary immunodeficiency, the IDF has been simply an invaluable resource to me. I hope you learn a ton, and if you need us, know that nobody should ever have to do this alone.
Welcome to the IDF Forum. I am Kim Farrell, Product Line Manager with Accredo. Accredo is a best-in-class specialty pharmacy with a nationwide network of immune globulin trained home infusion nurses and pharmacists. It is truly an honor and privilege to be part of this immune deficiency community. Accredo places patients at the center of all we do. We deliver individualized care and support for patients living with immune disorders. It's all about giving you a great and personalized pharmacy experience.
And at this time, we are going to start the Q&A session. I would like to introduce my colleague, Colleen Brock, who is a registered nurse and the manager of medical programs at IDF. So Colleen, I will stop sharing my screen and highlight you and Dr. Demirdag, and the two of you just carry on.
Colleen, can you unmute?
Sorry, talking to myself.
Mhm.
People are putting questions in and I was trying to kind of catch the last couple of them. So, all right, let's start. Some of these questions can be simple yeses and nos, but I still think they're important and we will try to get through as many as we can.
Sure.
So, does receiving IG infusions cause people to have allergic reactions to medications?
No, it's not a risk factor.
Do drug allergies decrease as your PI progresses? Is there any
There is no
correlation?
data on that.
Are drug allergies less severe if you are on IG replacement?
We don't know that either.
Is there any medical evidence to suggest PI patients develop an increased tolerance to medicine as they age and time progresses?
Increase intolerance or tolerance?
Intolerance.
Intolerance. Again, we don't have much data on that either, but as we take more medications, we may become more intolerant or allergic.
Plus, you might have drug interactions that would play
Of
into it
course,
as you
yeah.
age. Can a person become allergic to a drug they weren't allergic to when they were younger?
Yes, allergies can happen anytime. And tolerating the drug before doesn't necessarily mean you are going to tolerate it forever, but there's a small chance.
Have you ever heard of PI patients on low dose of prednisone that do not respond to medications like non-PI people? For example, beta blockers for cardiac condition were so androgenic that the cardiac condition worsened.
I don't know. I haven't heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Tough.
haven't even.
Yeah.
Even if we are not technically allergic to a specific drug, we still have some kind of bad reaction to it for some other reason. If so, can such a reaction that's not an allergy still be life-threatening?
Yes, that's a perfect question. And we get this all the time. Patient says, I never want to be on it again. Yes, I know I'm not allergic, but I don't want to do it again. And in this situation, we clarify the reaction in the chart. And this will tell the physicians that this wasn't IG mediated or anaphylactic or severe reaction, but the patient should be treated with alternatives because they don't want it. But if there is no other alternative, they have to weigh the risks and benefits. If it is really beneficial to take the drug, maybe those reactions can be prevented or treated, and then the patient can still take the drug.
Okay. What are your thoughts about, and this has to do with allergy testing, but hair analysis for sensitivity testing?
There is no scientific evidence on that.
Okay. How do you get your doctor to test you for medication allergies other than gene site mental health drugs, and will insurance cover it?
So yeah, I think they can speak with their allergists and see which drugs they can be tested for, because we don't do every drug. For example, opiates, we don't do skin testing. for challenges. Yeah, it depends on the drug, individual drug, and an individual reaction, type of the reaction.
Can you think you have an allergy to a new medication, but it's actually a drug interaction? And how can you tell whether it's the new medication you've been put on that you're reacting to versus that medication interacting with others that you are already on?
Right. Okay, that's a good question too. So if you are taking a medicine on a regular basis, like every day for a long time, it's very unlikely to develop allergy to it. So you're taking a blood pressure medicine for a long time, for many years, and then you take another medicine and you have some kind of reaction, it is very likely that the new medicine is the culprit. But the difference between allergic or drug interaction, again, depends on the type of the reaction. Like I was telling you about immediate, delayed. So immediate reactions happen immediately, within minutes to hours after taking the new drug. Delayed reactions can happen weeks or days after you start a new drug, and then maybe a variety of symptoms. Many times we can predict drug-drug interactions. There are tools what we can put all the drugs and then check interactions and say, for example, the COVID antiviral drug, Paxlovid, we know that when we prescribe it, we go over the medications. There's an online tool we go over and then see which drug is safer to continue and which drugs is safe, is okay to hold while the patient is on the drug.
Okay. I tested negative in the office for a penicillin allergy, but still have an allergy to penicillin. Is it possible because of my PI?
Okay, so that may be a different kind of reaction. Like immune system may not be involved or may be involved. Maybe it's a pseudo-allergic reaction that can cause negative test. Yeah, I understand. So, for example, patients with primary immunodeficiencies, yes, some of them, most of them with antibody deficiency, their immune system cannot make specific immunoglobulins like specific IgG as well as IgE. So you would expect that they have less often like IgE-mediated reactions. So if the test is negative, but you are still having reaction, again, the type of the reaction is important for us to determine what is that. Is it allergy, like immune system is involved, or is it like pseudo-allergy, or it's something else? If it's really severe, patient should avoid it. If it is mild, again, weigh the risks and benefits and decide on taking it.
And which is more common, a true allergy to a medication or a severe intolerance to a medication?
True allergy is rare. As in the example of the IgE-mediated drug allergies, it's 1%, maybe less than 1% of general population. For PI, we still don't know what is the true incidence, but at least in CVID, we know it's rare. But intolerance may be more common. And we see that all the time, and it can be mistaken with drug allergy.
Does having a PI make you higher at risk for intolerance to medications?
I don't know. We have any data on that.
Okay. I have undetectable IgE and test negative to allergy tests. There's no histamine reaction due to undetectable IgE. Can you explain this? I test positive for genetic drug metabolism issues.
Okay, yeah, so if the histamine test is negative, because the histamine is our positive control, so it doesn't bind the IgE receptor on mast cells. It just directly stimulates the mast cells to release histamine. So IG is not involved in the histamine reaction. And then we put that histamine test along with the negative control, just like a quality control. So if the histamine test is negative, the whole test should be repeated.
Okay. What does a positive skin test look like compared to a negative test using the example of penicillin?
Yeah, so yes, we put the intradermal or skin prick testing first, then intradermal, and then we measure the size of the wheal, the swelling part, and compare to the negative control, which is saline.
Oh, okay.
And if the drug reaction, the wheal size is larger than the saline, like 3 millimeters or more, then we consider that positive reaction.
Okay. I can relate to this question. For sulfa, is it important to see if it is an allergy or an intolerance? Can you test for sulfa allergies?
Of course, like we can test many drugs, of course, but again, like the skin test is not the best test for sulfa. The history is important. Like history is the most important thing with the sulfa allergy. When did it happen? What happened, etc. And based on the history, we can do a challenge. So I think that's the only thing we do in the office for sulfa allergy. Of course, sulfa allergy in some people cause like Stevens-Johnson syndrome or more severe delayed type of reactions, then we just say avoid it. There's no challenge for that. It's contraindicated.
Okay. Since a positive ST does not always mean clinical allergy, what situation challenge can be done despite positive ST?
Yes, we do this too in the office. Again, we look at the history. The patient has only hives and the skin test is positive. The patient didn't have anaphylaxis, skin test is positive. Okay, let's try it. We do this all the time. Sometimes in kids specifically, we don't even do skin testing anymore. We just do direct challenge.
I know that you kind of address this, but we get this question a lot through Ask IDF. Is allergy testing in general, not necessarily for medications, but just in general, accurate in people with PI and on IG replacement, or just with a PI in general?
Yeah, I don't think IG replacement affects the skin test results. And as I was saying before, some patients with antibody deficiency or combined immune deficiency, their immune system may not be able to produce specific IgE, and therefore the test can be negative. And there are other conditions such as local allergic rhinitis, for example. We cannot detect the IgE in the skin by skin testing or in the blood, but the IgE is in the nose causing like rhinitis. And then those patients are treated the same way as the skin test positive. Again, depending on the allergy tests.
Can you please discuss true drug allergy and anaphylaxis versus an anaphylactoid reaction that isn't a true allergy?
Sure. Again, true drug allergy is when the immune system is involved. Anaphylaxis, IgE, most of the time is involved. Anaphylactoid used to be a term, but now we say that to anaphylaxis. That happens when the medication directly stimulates the mast cells to release histamine. And then like vancomycin flushing syndrome or radio contrast media or opiates, even opiates can bind the opiate receptor on mast cells and can mimic anaphylaxis. In terms of treatment, anaphylaxis and anaphylactoid reactions are treated the same way when the reaction happens. If the patient needs epinephrine, we give epinephrine to both. If they only need antihistamine, we give antihistamine. But in the future management, it is different, where if it is a true anaphylactic reaction, and we determine that by skin testing or challenge or by history, we avoid that medicine. And if it is an anaphylactoid or soda allergic reaction, patients can tolerate these medications such as vancomycin, radiocontrast by either pre-medication and slower infusion or just slower infusion.
Okay. Can you comment on how to manage multiple drug sensitivities that do not appear to be allergies, just unacceptable side effects, even with low doses? I am sensitive to many drugs.
Oh, that's a tough one because in theory, we think that patients who have reactions to many drugs, more than one class of drugs, may be reacting to the excipient, drug excipients, not the active ingredient, but something else, another ingredient in the drug, which is common in all drugs. So the allergist may be able to help with that too.
Interesting. Here's another one that apparently knows me. With many displaying allergies to shellfish over time, is there any thought being given by the FDA to eliminate dyes made from shellfish or other common allergens?
Okay, so shellfish allergy, it's a food allergy, and patients are allergic to the protein component of the shellfish. I don't know about the dye, but I don't think it's made from the protein component. Maybe it's something else. If they mean like a radio contrast dye, then yeah, there's no relationship between shellfish allergy or iodine allergy or radio contrast allergy. We used to believe that, but there's no relationship.
Interesting.
Yes.
How common are allergies to preservatives like polysorbate 80 in people with PID?
Oh, we don't know that. I don't know how common they are, unfortunately.
Can you tell me the incident of DRESS syndrome, drug reaction eosinophilia systematic syndrome, in the PI community and its effect on worsening autoimmunity?
Yeah, actually, I specifically checked for that. I didn't find a lot of cases. There was only one case, maybe two, with DRESS syndrome with PI. I don't know the true incidence, but it seems like it's rare. But again, I don't know.
I've had 2 IVIG infusions, and I had what was termed a very rare reaction that began 9 days after the first one, and then had to stop during the second infusion. What or how do I find out what I reacted to and what other medicine I might be able to take?
Again, like this should be discussed by your immunologist. Sometimes it's one of the components of the product, and they may tolerate other brands or sub-Q brands. So it needs to be discussed by the immunologist.
Have a history of elevated IgE and a new allergy to a lidocaine. How likely is someone to develop more drug allergies as my IgE keeps climbing?
So I don't think there is a relationship with IgE level and risk of drug allergy. However, having a drug allergy is a risk factor to get another drug allergy. This may be that.
Okay. What do patients do who have a polysorbate or a PEG allergy and cannot take the COVID vaccine or other vaccines that contain those?
Yes, so we are still learning a lot about the COVID vaccine reactions. In the beginning, even patients who had anaphylaxis, we were saying, let's just avoid, we were testing with PEG, polysorbate, but then we realized that patients who developed severe reactions to the first dose were able to tolerate the second dose. We still don't know why. So different practices have different approach to this. Again, like it should be discussed depending on your reaction, depending on your reactions to other vaccines. This should be discussed with the allergist.
Can you elaborate on your comment about allergy to neuromuscular drugs like anesthesia?
Mhm. Yeah, so neuromuscular blocking agents are used during general anesthesia and can trigger IG-mediated reactions like antibiotics. Patients in the middle of the surgery, they can develop hives, swelling, low blood pressure, and we can test. The skin test is not like perfect test. There are possibility of false negative result, but if it is positive, if the skin test is positive, it's valuable. And what we do is we skin test with alternative neuromuscular blocking agents, and whichever is negative, we recommend to the surgeon or anesthesia that just give a test dose of this and then see how they do. And then if they don't have any reaction, you can continue that.
I received vancomycin and had red band syndrome
Mhm.
and hives immediately after. Is it safe to receive it in the future at a slower rate, or should it be avoided altogether?
Of course, if it is needed, definitely patients tolerate it at slower rate with or without pre-medication.
Can you tell everybody what red man syndrome is?
Oh yeah, so Redman syndrome, now we call it like a vancomycin flushing syndrome or vancomycin infusion reaction. That's when the mast cells directly release histamine and it mimics real allergic reaction. And the histamine goes and does its job like hives or flushing, itching, runny nose, sometimes wheezing. This happens with vancomycin in some people, unfortunately, and infusing it slower, like over 3 hours instead of 1 hour, may help. And we also recommend like antihistamine before taking this medicine, and many patients tolerate it well.
Thank you. I had hives and C. diff from amoxicillin, then C. diff from Ceftin. Does this mean I'm allergic to those medications? And personally, my heart goes out to this person. My son has had it 3 times and no thanks.
With amoxicillin? Okay. Yeah, so C. diff is just side effect or complication of antibiotic treatment, can happen with any antibiotic, but hives can be a true allergic reaction, needs to be checked by an allergist.
So the hives are the concern, not the C. diff?
Well, C. diff obviously is a concern, but it's not
Right.
an allergic
But
reaction.
the C. diff is not
Right.
an allergic reaction.
Yes.
However, the
Yes.
hives to the amoxicillin should be investigated.
Yes.
Okay. I have several questions, and maybe you can just kind of touch on if there is a correlation regarding mast cell and allergies and PI, and what is the relationship with PI, mast cell, and drug allergies?
So PI, mast cells, and drug allergies. Okay, so
Do they go together? Are they separate?
Right. I don't think PI goes with mast cells, but we know that they have increased risk of reported drug allergies. So with the mast cells, yeah, I don't. Yes, there are mast cell activation syndrome. Maybe may go with like antibody deficiency very rarely. That's what I'm thinking. In terms of mast cell activation syndrome or mast cell disease and drug allergy, yes, that's a possibility. Mastocytosis. Those patients may develop allergic reaction to many medications. It's so rare. I've never seen it, but in theory, that's possible. But 3 together, I don't think they are connected.
Okay, thanks. How can immediate type allergy occur in patients with congenital A-gamma globulinemia with very low IgE?
Right. Again, like I briefly mentioned it, it is unlikely to develop IgE if you have antibody deficiency, like drug-specific antibody, especially A-gamma globulinemia. I don't think it's IgE mediated. there are other components of the immune system may be involved, or maybe it's just a direct mast cell release.
I had taken Avelox for years for urinary or upper respiratory infections, and one night I became hot, dizzy, lightheaded, and took several doses of Benadryl, but did not go to the hospital. I have not taken it since. I have HEIS. Would this be considered an allergic reaction or a cytokine reaction?
So if it is taken for several days and then day 4, 5, 6, the reaction happened, it is not IgE mediated reaction. At this, I can tell you that. It may be side effect or toxicity. Again, an allergist may be able to help with that, to clarify.
If you're curious to try a drug you think you were allergic to at some point in your lifetime, what precautions should you take if you want to try it?
Yeah, okay, so it depends on what kind of reaction you had. Obviously, don't try it if you had anaphylaxis, if you had Stevens-Johnson syndrome. The best way is, again, to discuss with your immunologist and see. Some patients I know try it in doctor's office. Some patients we do it in allergy office after careful evaluation, history, and sometimes skin testing. I wouldn't do it at home.
Do drug allergies worsen after menopause?
Oh, yeah, so we know that age is a risk factor and that the more exposure is a risk factor. So maybe together, I don't think it's related to hormonal changes, but it is related to the age.
I do not have a typical allergic reaction, but I get hives from medications several hours later. Is this something that happens often in PI? I once had an allergy to doxycycline that lasted for over a month. Even after I stopped the medicine, allergists said I would have to shed layers of skin to get it out of my system, and it was horrible.
Okay, so if this is like true hives, like urticaria, and if it is lasting 1 month after you stop the medication, it is unlike the drug allergy, but it may be just idiopathic urticaria. Maybe it is due to the viral infection. But it seems like it is not really hives. Maybe it's a different kind of delayed type of reaction. So again, the allergist can do challenge, but it seems like this is more delayed type of reaction. I don't think I would do challenge in this situation.
EpiPens seem to have metabosulfites in them. What do you do if you have an anaphylaxis reaction to sulfites?
Okay, so we've never seen allergic reaction to EpiPen, and there is absolutely no contraindication to EpiPen. When there's an allergic reaction happening and it is anaphylaxis, we do EpiPen. Okay, so sulfite allergy, I don't think it is it's a culprit in EpiPen. So I think if it is needed, the EpiPen should be given immediately.
I had a severe reaction to amoxicillin. A week later, of redness and deep redness in the mouth and lips as well. But I took a drug test and I'm not allergic to amoxicillin. Should I do something before I take it the next time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would follow the allergist's recommendation at this time. So who did the skin testing and the challenge, and maybe who were able to see the pictures and see you. It looks like this is more delayed type of reaction. Your allergist should be able to help with that.
Have you ever heard of IG replacement causing hair loss? Is that an allergy side effect?
I don't think it's an allergy side effect. I haven't heard it.
Okay. And the last question, it's complicated, but I think it's warranted. I have MCAS, POTS, Ehlers-Danlos, and immune deficiency subclass 1. I am allergic to penicillin. Thinks she means erythromycin, doxycycline, Ceftin, and Cipro. Anaphylaxis, swelling, and hives. I was told my immune deficiency triggers the mast cell activation syndrome. Based on what you said, it doesn't seem so, but once I started my sub-Q, my mast cell daily reactions are more at bay.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, but I don't know the connection, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about mast cell, and do you have more
Yes.
allergies if you have mast cell? Is there research anywhere that you know of having to do with allergies and mast cell? Not necessarily the PI component, but just
Right. Yes, there are places where they do a lot of research. They can go to clinicaltrials.gov and look
Okay.
at for mast cell activation syndrome. But we know that mast cell activation syndrome patients develop like direct mast cell release in rather than IgE mediated mast cell, and they can be prevented by strong antihistamines pre-treatment before they do the antibiotic.
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
It was a
truly
pleasure.
appreciate you answering all the questions. If
Yeah,
somebody
they were
comes
good
up with a
questions.
question afterwards or through the evening, remember you can reach out to IDF through Ask IDF, and we will be able to help you any way that you have with any question that you have. But Dr. Demirdag, you were amazing, and you were a wealth of information, and I greatly appreciate you
Thank you.
volunteering your time.
Of course, it was a pleasure. Thanks again for the opportunity.